actually, I think we're kind of getting into one of our next questions that we wanted to ask you about, because how you're saying that AI is actually redefining that human technology world relationship. And so before we delve into the specific metaphysical aspects of the philosophical framework that you develop, could you speak more in general terms about how AI is redefining that relationship and especially what the stakes are? Like, for instance, you speak of the emergence of new value conflicts and the need to move from a mode of problem solution or solutionism to a mode of predicament resolution. And so could you expand a little bit more on these ideas?
Yeah, maybe I'll take the latter distinction first and then work back. So with the problem predicament distinction, I think it's part of this way of looking at the world in which we could talk about two different kinds of creativity, closed creativity and open creativity. With closed creativity, you know what you want to get to. You're just not quite sure how to get there. So a problem is a new thing occurs, circumstances change, and all of our old techniques suddenly don't seem to be able to get us to the goal we want to arrive at. So we've got goods, we've got interests that we want to pursue, and we're not able to do that because circumstances, something has changed. How do you deal with that? Well, you solve the problem, meaning you know where you want to arrive. You just need to figure out how to get there within whatever your parameters are, whether those parameters are what are the resources available, what's available knowledge, etc. Predicaments are really different, and they require open creativity. So predicaments occur when we're made aware of conflicts among our own values, aims, and interests. Because we've got values conflicts, conflicts among our own aims and interests, the thing that we can't do in advance is to define where it is that we want to end up. So a kind of poster child, example of this is climate change. I mean, everybody recognizes that there's an issue with climate change today. We've known this for 50 years. Why have we not dealt effectively with climate change? Why are we still talking about pushing out, climate, carbon neutrality out 15 years, 50 years, from today, when we've known about this for 50 years? It's because climate change is not a technical problem. It's not about just carbon in the atmosphere. It's about why the carbon's in the atmosphere, how it got there, and the reasons for allowing it to continue going up into the atmosphere. It's a conflict among economic values, environmental values, political values, the cultural values, if I don't want to give up my car and the convenience that gives me. It's the values conflicts that are keeping climate change from being dealt with. So climate change is a predicament. And predicaments can't be solved, they can only be resolved, where resolution implies two things: clarity about how this predicament came to be, that are what are its causal conditions, and then clarity, commitment to changing the values configuration that we've got to be able to allow us to move in a new direction. So it's all about not just changing how we do things, but why we do things and for what reason. And that's necessarily a process of changing ourselves. So when we go to look at intelligent technology and ask, well, is it posing us just with some new problems to solve, which is what some people would say. There's nothing new about computer technology. There's nothing new about the information revolution. It's all old stuff. We've got ethics in place to deal with it. We've got legal structures and regulatory schemes in place. All we need to do is update them to take account of what's going on with, say, algorithmic intelligence. I don't think that's the case. And I think what we're looking at is a shift that's really, really fundamental. A shift when I'm talking about is smart services away from intelligent human practices. So it's smart services like using your cell phone's index, the contacts list, to keep a record of all the people's phone numbers. You could have addresses, email contacts, et cetera, everything in there. Well, what does that do? Well, it takes the intelligent human practice of remembering and it outsources it to this instrument, to this tool. And people will say, well, what's the problem with that? It does a great job of it. Its memory is better than my memory ever was. It's so convenient. It's very easy to lose. All I have to do is open up and take a look, bang, bang. And that's true to some extent. But I still use an address book. And I use an address book because once I write a number into an address book and an email address and refer back to it and key in those addresses, at a certain point, I've internalized those. I've made them my own. In the same way, if you use GPS to get around a city, it's very convenient. But if you use an old style map and you internalize the space within yourself, you learn to navigate sort of intuitively. You don't have to think about the routes. You sort of already know how to get places. So what we're talking about is a change in the relationship between us as humans and, for example, the past, our place within geosocial space, and how that's oriented. When we allow smart services to start doing that for us, we run the risk of the atrophy of our capacity for engaging in those intelligent human practices. Now, why is that important? You take something like memory. Memory is absolutely crucial to acting on our own behalf. If we can't remember how things have been, we can't improvise, we can't change on purpose, we can't take our intentions, implement them, adjust as we go, improve our conduct within the situation. We can't grow socially, spiritually, as humans, unless we've got memory. So I think things like memory, educating, parenting are all at risk of being outsourced to intelligent technology. And that poses really significant predicaments for us humans.
So what I'm hearing is that AI, because of the capabilities that it possesses, you know, one of the central risks, as you see it, is this outsourcing of memory and attention. And that prevents